All right, so for this video, we're gonna go over purging and storing your equipment. This process will be used if it's going to be an extended period of time when you're not using your system. We want to prevent that A side from crystallizing inside of the lines or the machine itself. So this will be the steps taken to prevent that from happening. So I went ahead and already done it, but you'll want to pour some purge into an empty pail. So I have it about halfway full of purge, and that should be enough for 60 foot of a hose. So I'm going to go ahead and place my transfer pump in that pail. I'm going to remove my air line, pull this out, and then I'm going to wipe off any excess that's on there, and then place it inside of this pail here. And then to keep it from falling over while I'm trying to work, I'm going to tape it to the drum to keep it secure. Just like so. Now that that's secure, I'm going to attach my airline back on. And I'm going to open up my valve here. And then I'm going to also open up my inlet valve. Now that I have those open, I'm going to go to my gun here and remove my block. And this is a PMC Extreme gun. I'll go ahead and unscrew that now. All right, now that I have that off, I'm going to remove my airline from there, make it a little easy to move it. And I'm actually going to have a second bucket here. It's going to be empty. I'm going to go ahead and open up my valve on that ISO side and try to push all that ISO out until I get a good steady flow of just that purging material. All right, now that we have our purge, we moved that through our system, got all the ISO out. Now we want to actually push that purge out of our system. We don't want that solvent sitting in our hoses for too long. So what we'll do is we'll actually put store into a pail like I've already done here. Again, I filled it about halfway full of store. Have the transfer pump in there, valves are open, and then I'll actually open up a valve on that block to get all of that purge material out and get that stored to go all the way through the whole system. And once you have that material change, you can go ahead and seal off your block. You can put this transfer pump back into your drum, and then you can actually repeat this process on the B side as well. And then the very last thing that I would recommend doing would be checking your Y screen, pull that out, make sure it's clean, and I'll show you how we do that here. All right, so for this, we're going to go over a hot flush of your system. So the situations where we'll want to use this method is if you're collecting a lot of crystals in your gun screen, or even your Y screen is getting plugged up frequently. It could be that there's just a buildup of ISO crystals in your feed hose or your line set, or just inside of your system in general. So the process we'll do is we'll actually pour a pail of purge into this empty pail here. I have it about halfway full of that purge material. And I'm going to go ahead and move this transfer pump into that pail of purge. So I'm going to remove my air line, and I'm going to pull this out of the drum. I'm going to wipe off any excess that's on there. We'll place this inside of the pail here. And then so it doesn't fall over while I'm trying to work, I'm going to go ahead and tape it to the drum. Alright, now that we have that this is secure, we'll reattach the air line. And I'm going to go ahead and open this valve on the pump, and then also open the valve on the machine. Next, I'm going to go ahead and remove the block from my gun. I'm using a PMC Extreme gun, so I'll go ahead and remove this now. And the hot flush procedure is generally just done on that A side because that's the side where you have crystals and buildup. So I'm going to do that today. So now that we have our transfer pump and our purge, we have the airline hooked up, we have our valve open there. I'm going to go ahead and open up my valve here into a bucket until I flush out all of the ISO and get just purge coming through. I'm going to go ahead and open up this valve now, just slowly, and let it flow out until I get a good steady flow. And I'm waiting until it all becomes a thin, clear material that is the purge. All right, so for this, we're actually going to be covering up our block with actual pantyhose. You can use cheesecloth or any kind of way you can filter out any ISO crystals that we're actually going to be flushing out. Because at this point, we're going to be recirculating this purge back into the purge bucket the transfer pump is in, and we're going to let it recirculate for about 30 minutes, and this will collect any ISO crystals that you have in your system, so you're not going to be getting it into your gun screen anymore. So I actually cut off a piece of it, is what I use here, and we'll open it up and we'll slide it over the block. You want to make sure that you got plenty of room down below for the crystals to get caught at. And then I'll use electrical tape to kind of keep this in place. We'll do a couple wraps of that. And now that we got that nice and wrapped, we'll remove that there. And then I'm going to put it back into our purge bucket, let that purge recirculate. So everything is still on, our transfer pump's still on, our valve on the side of the machine is still on. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, and I'm going to open up that ISO valve. And then we'll let that recirculate for about 30 minutes. All right, now after we've had it recirculate for about 30 minutes, we're going to check our stocking to see how much of a buildup we have. So I'm going to remove that tape and see how much we've collected. So I'm going to slide this off here. I'll set this to the side here. And then we want to see how much we have crystallized as we have in here. If we have a lot, we may need to recirculate for longer. If we don't have much, we won't really need to. In this case, we don't really have much of anything caught in there, which is good, meaning that our hoses are pretty clean. But if you do have quite a buildup of crystals in there, you may actually want to swap out this pantyhose for a new one and let it recirculate for a longer period of time to make sure you get all those crystals out. So now that we've recirculated our purge through and we've checked our pantyhose to make sure we didn't collect a lot of ISO crystals, we didn't really have any, so that's great. It means our hose is in good, clean shape. But if you were collecting some, again, it's important to note to put a new section of the pantyhose on there and let it recirculate longer until you stop collecting on that. So now I'm actually going to get all that purge out by pushing ISO through. So I'm going to go ahead and take our ISO transfer pump out of that purge pail and reinstall it back in our drum. So I'm just going to go ahead and simply just remove the tape. I'm actually going to unhook my airline here. Put that there. We'll pull this up. And then I'm going to wipe off any excess purge that I have on the pump. And then reinstall it in the drum. Now that I have that in place, I'm going to reattach that airline. And I'm going to turn it on. And then I'm actually going to make sure my inlet monitoring is on. My gauge is open. And then I'll go ahead and let this push all of that purge out until we get a good steady flow of ISO. So again, I'm going to use the block and my tool here. I'm going to open this into the bucket until I get some ISO coming through.